There it goes. I think it's recording now. So I must apologize. It is Monday afternoon. And of course, yesterday, whenever we attempted to record the sermon, it obviously failed. So now you get me up close and personal. And of course, you're there wondering the same thing I'm wondering. Is that powdered sugar on his beard? No, it's just gray hair. But thank you for noticing. Glad you got to join me again today. God bless you all. I love you and miss you. If you weren't at church Sunday, it was a good service, good turnout. Had a lot of visitors. Got some visitors from Pennsylvania, had some visitors from California, as well as other folks from the surrounding areas that came in for the weekend that joined us for church. So we'd love to have you back as soon as we can, but I know if you're watching this, it may be because you just weren't able to be here on that day, and we're looking forward to watching this at a later time. In that case, here you go. I will give you a choice to fast forward if you want to read this on your own, but I'm going to go ahead and read the 5th chapter of Daniel, which was what we studied Sunday morning. It is a little bit longer. It's 31 verses, but the story is phenomenal. I did discover this in my studies and looking into this whole book of Daniel that we'll be covering. And I realized that this chapter is misplaced. I should have preached this sermon 2 weeks from now, rather 3 weeks from now. But it is what it is. As chapters 7 and 8 actually cover the prophetic work of Daniel prior to the writing of the wall incident. So for the next 2 weeks after this, I'm going to be covering chapters 7 and 8, which actually are dealing with everything in the first and third year of Belshazzar's 17-year rule as king. I know that that's probably not as important, but it does show God's sovereignty over his kingdom and God establishing and fulfilling his word that he had given Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2. And we'll begin with chapter 5 today, since that is what we preached this past Sunday. And we'll go from there. So, the word of the Lord says this in Daniel chapter 5. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine in front of the thousands. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lords, his wives, his concubines might drink from them. Real smart guy here. Then they brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall in the king's palace, opposite of the lampstand. And the king saw that the hand, as it wrote, then the king, his color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king called loudly to bring the enchanters, the Chaldeans, the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck, and shall be the third ruler of the kingdom. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king its interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, as the queen mother, not his queen, but the queen mother, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet hall, and the queen declared, O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you, or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and the astrologers, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show you the interpretation. Verse 13, Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, You're that Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought from Judah. I have heard of you that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show me the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and shall be the third ruler of the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, Let your gifts be for yourself, and your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him its interpretation. O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he killed. Whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he raised up. And whom he would, he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with wild donkeys. And he was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind, and set over it whom he will. And you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all of this. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know. But the God in whose hand is your breath, and whose are all your ways, you have not honored. Then from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, mene, tekel parsin. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar gave command, and Daniel was clothed in purple. A chain of gold was placed around his neck, and a proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler of the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years of age. May God add his blessing to his word. So, as it says, my father was what Belshazzar was talking about. And let me just clarify so that we all are on the same page and understand what he means by when he says father. Back then, the term grandfather, grandson, grandchildren was not heard of. Everybody was the son of. So my dad's name was Donnie. I am son of Donald. His real name is Donald. And his dad's name was Donald. I know that's kind of confusing. But I am Jared, son of Donald, son of Donald. So that's what it is. This is his grandfather that he's talking about, Nebuchadnezzar. As a matter of fact, it has now been 70 years since the exile and the children of Israel were brought and integrated into Babylonian kingdom. It has been now roughly 23 years since Nebuchadnezzar has passed away. So here's another thing. There has been a few other kings between now and then, between Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. Let me tell you this about them. After Nebuchadnezzar died, he was succeeded by his son. And let me tell you, if this seems like a good baby name for some people, Evil Merodach. That's a good baby name right there. Evil Merodach. You know what, honey? Let's name our child Evil Merodach. That's just a bit fitting, I think. I look down at him and go, whew. But that's just a terrible name. The actual root of Merodach is actually found in Marduk. That's one of their Babylonian gods that they liked so much. You've heard me mention this if you've attended church or listened to the sermons that we put out digitally, but most likely if you were here present, Marduk is the baby killer god. He was a terrible, obviously not real, but he is someone terrible that they worshipped. It's the one that they built statues of, and the statue was holding a basin, and they would put a fire under it, cook it white hot, and then put an infant child on it. Yeah. Just absolutely terrible to kill a child that way. Which makes you think of abortions. And actually, if you look at some of the methods for how they go about doing that is almost similar. In heinous. No, they don't make a fire, but they inject a saline solution that does that. Yeah, it's terrible. Why do we need to know this? Because we need to be serious and conscientious about what's going on in the world. Because I do know in Texas, Governor Abbott signed a petition that abortions are not legal in the state of Texas if you can hear a fetal heartbeat. I want to say it was like 4 to 6 weeks that you can hear that. So anything before that, it's better than nothing, but it's still not the right answer. The right answer is 0, and that's my opinion. I can get in trouble for that all you want, and I'd love to have conversations about that with people, but I digress. This is what this Marduk was worshipped at, and this person was named Evil Merodach, named after Marduk. But he was actually murdered by Neriglissar, his brother-in-law, who succeeded him. Neriglissar ruled for about 4 years and was succeeded by his son Labashi Marduk, who was assassinated about 2 months after being on the throne. This is a dysfunctional family. Labashi Marduk, it's another one of those named after that god, was replaced by Nabonidus, who ruled to this point. So here's the thing I want you to get. Nabonidus was the king. Belshazzar was the co-regent, was co-king. So that was his dad. Belshazzar's dad is Nabonidus. So they both co-ruled. The reason why Belshazzar is mentioned here in Babylon is ruling, and he's the one hosting this feast, is because Nabonidus' daddy is gone. He's been gone for 15 years now. He's been building up altars to their gods, reinstating all these temples, doing all these other things to set up pagan worship in the Babylon provinces. And he's left little boy Belshazzar to rule. So, and as we will find out, and we read earlier, that what is going on there today and the purpose of this feast is the Persians are outside. They have laid siege to the city of Babylon. And it's their attempt to celebrate, to rally the people. They got these thousands of lords and all these people, probably generals, big name, big wig people to come in, and they're all trying to dine and get them all riled up and excited about winning this battle against the Persians whenever the hand appears. And we know that as this hand appears, they've already gone and taken these vessels, the utensils, the cups, the goblets, and all these things that were stored in the temple that were made specifically according to God's standards, were used for wine tasting, were used for a party, for a drunken party. Not only were they just used that way, but they were given to all the different lords, to this king. Then they were given to this king's wives and his concubines, in other words, mistresses. And they all just drank from them. I don't know if that's because I'm not God. I don't know what was in God's mind, but the interesting thing I think of is the hand didn't appear until they praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. When they started praising those as gods, that's when the problem started. It's because of the audacity and just evil nature of their minds and did not pay honor to God. And as we know, Daniel would say later on that you knew all of this about the Most High God. He was Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. Nebuchadnezzar had ruled long enough and could be seen as a completely changed man. Many of us have family members that whenever they came to Christ, you noticed the change. You noticed there was a complete difference in them when you were younger, when you were their child or grandchild or cousin or something. You noticed the difference. Everybody would have known this. As a matter of fact, in the previous chapters, because Nebuchadnezzar wrote the chapter of his prideful actions that caused him to become like an animal, everybody knew about that because he was writing that letter to the Babylonian people. He was telling people, so he would have told his family. Hence, Belshazzar knowing all about this. But anyways, as they were all eating, and opposite of the lampstand, here's where I think it's really just getting crazy for Belshazzar, where he deserves this. It's because he had the audacity to take the lampstand. I kind of believe that this was the lampstand that was placed in the holy place of God in the temple. That he brought this up and set it up and decorated the whole place with all this stuff just to show their might. And opposite of that is where the hand started to scribe on the wall. You know, it's a sad cartoon kind of appearance because you notice that the king, his color changed. He started quaking in his boots. Literally, the text says his knees knocked together. He started shaking, convulsing. He was so scared. And everybody noticed this. Everybody saw it. It was visible. Everybody knew what was going on. There's a creepy hand floating in the air writing on the walls. Nobody could figure it out. The other thing that was going on is that he did like what everyone else has done in this world. They call in the wise guys. But you notice the chief, the boss for all of these people was not present. He may have been invited to it, may not have been invited to it, but he wasn't there. But you notice the king brought in everybody else but him. If you're a wise king, you want the best to figure out the truth. What I think was going on is Belshazzar didn't want to know the truth. Deep down inside, he did not want to really hear this is what it is. He wanted to hear some better news, maybe get him in a better mood. Get these wise guys in here and tell him, oh, it just means that everything's going to be okay, and you're just wanting to seal it in stone that your day will be great, a great victory. People in this world don't want to hear the truth because it's going to change them. They're going to have to confront it if they hear the truth. They're going to have to come to terms with it if they hear the truth. He did not want to hear a single thing that Daniel had to say. Otherwise, he would have called him in first. And that's it. Are we making an opportunity to hear the truth? Are we putting ourselves out there to receive and hear the truth, to allow it to change us? Or are we scared of the truth like he is? Again, Belshazzar knew everything going on with his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, knew everything that he had done, spoken of, even why he was in the position that he was, being turned into an animal. He knew this, as Daniel had already told him. You knew all of this. What I find humorous is whenever Daniel got into the room and started to discuss all these very things with him, Daniel was kind of brave. I mean, he knew what side he was on. And for him to stand up and say, King, your grandfather did all the right things, but before that, he was doing a lot of goofy things. Pointed the fact out that he had done all these things, and then told him everything that was wrong with him. Back then, you didn't just go into a king's throne room and spit stuff out like that and chew the king out. The king just let it happen. We know that the king accepted it and just sat there and listened, because at the very end, he follows through with his word to clothe him in purple, make him a royal individual, and put him as the third ruler. And that's how we validate and know that there were three rulers. Nabonidus, the father, and Belshazzar, the son, were co-regents. They were ruling it together. They were two rulers, and then making him the third, making Daniel the third ruler. So it would have been those two not too wise individuals, and Daniel being the third. Which brings about what will happen later on in the following chapters. But the audacity of King Belshazzar, whenever Daniel came in, you notice that he started immediately goes, "You're that Daniel," one of the exiles. He wanted to point out he knew who he was. "Whom the king my father brought from Judah, and I heard that you have a spirit of the gods in you, and you can give me all these wonderful and great and awesome things if you just share those with me." You know what? It kind of reminds me of Luke chapter 23. Whenever Jesus was brought before Herod, as a matter of fact. In verse 8 in chapter 23, "When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had longed and desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to do some sign and have it done before him." Dance, monkey, dance. That's what Belshazzar wanted. He didn't care about any message that he had. He just wanted to see him work and do something, give him just a little bit of a tidbit. Daniel pointed out the fact that he was abusing the vessels of God. And there was a problem with it, and gave him the prophecy and what its interpretation was. Two things so far. Recognize truth, where it comes from, and go to that truth. Be attracted to that truth. Want the truth all the time, not just yes people to give us warm fuzzies and make us feel good, rainbows and butterflies. The truth is often painful. It really is. We can't just expect the truth to be just all wonderful and good and happy, just fill her up with goodness all the time. The truth can be ugly sometimes, especially when it points out our depraved nature before a holy God. Now, here in the second part is that Belshazzar was abusing the vessels of God, taking advantage of the things of God. It's exactly what Herod was doing. Just show me something. Do something good for me. I just want to see something great and grand. Belshazzar, I heard that you could do all these wonderful things. So, if you can do all this, I'll give you something good for it. Woo me. For believers, we must always take care when we interact with the things of God, whether that be prayer, whether that be song, whether that be sacrifices or offerings. And yes, sacrifices are a part of it. We still do that today. It contrasts the temple, and all these utensils represented a specific aspect of worship in God's holy temple that were removed. Now, since Christ, the veil is torn, where's the temple reside? In us. We no longer have these golden utensils. We no longer have a lampstand. As a matter of fact, the eyes are the candles of our hearts. They reflect out God's glory for us. Same thing of our songs. Everything we say and do and sing are giving praise to God. Our prayers are like the incense burner. It's a sweet aroma to God's smell, to God's nose. The sacrifices of the offerings that were poured out to God, and we're burnt up for Him. That's giving something vitally important over to Him. Whenever I say we do sacrifice ourselves, things of us that we truly value and that we want to keep to our own, but we offer over to Him. That's a sacrifice. If we offer up our time, our energy, our abilities, our love, everything, whatever we sacrifice to God is meant to kind of take a bit of ourselves, and it's not supposed to feel good necessarily all the time, but it's meant to offer ourselves up to Him, knowing that He's worth it. Though it pains us, He's going to fulfill us way 100-fold for our sacrifices on this earth to Him and all of our praises. So anytime we interact with God in prayer, in scripture, in song, in sacrifice, and offering anything, know that we have to do it reverently. Not just flippantly, oh yeah, God this, God that, not being that way. That's what Belshazzar was doing. Oh, give me the cups. Oh, maybe we could do this and it'll give us a great victory. Here, honey, honey, honey. Here, sweetheart, sweetheart, sweetheart. You can all have a drink out of this cup. Big gold cup for you, dear heart. Yeah, make you all happy. Maybe this God and these Jews' God will bless us with a victory. That's what he was doing. Maybe I could just go to church and God will bless me. Maybe I could just pray this one time and God will bless me. Maybe if I participate in the song service, God will bless me. Maybe if I just give up a little bit of time to go to church service, God will bless me. Maybe if I give $20, God will bless me. No, it's a matter of our hearts and how we are reverent and how we offer up those prayers and songs and praise and sacrifices and offerings with a contrite heart. That's what God wants, is a contrite, humbled heart. That's not what Belshazzar had. That's what we should have. But I digress. As we saw the interpretation on the wall, what it meant for him, why we need to get our act together seriously concerning the things of God is because one day, as it is for Belshazzar, God has numbered our days. As Daniel had already said, the very breath in our lungs is from Him. The only reason why I don't have a heart attack right now and die is because God has given me the breath to continue on, and I can't squander that. Every breath is precious, because we're going to stand in that judgment, and whether we're on one side or the other, we're going to be weighed, and either we balance out because of Christ and what He has done in our lives and the salvation that we get from Him, or a lifetime of our own actions and our own things that we're trying to do to please God and make God happy and just be a good person, and we're sit on that scale and He has outbalanced us over, He's just too heavy for us to even compete with, and we have nothing else to offer. We're going to be on the receiving end of His judgment. And we're going to be standing there going, God, I want your salvation. I need it. I want it. You're going to be found wanting. And guess what? It's been given to somebody else. Other people have received that salvation that you did not want. So let me encourage you, number one, if you're watching this and you're not a believer, you don't want to be standing in that judgment wanting. You'll want to be in that judgment having Christ standing before you saying, He's mine or she's mine. I paid the price for her. And not standing there, God, I was a nice person. I did a lot of good things. Can I get in? Be gone from me, you faithless servant. I know you not, is what you would hear. And those are probably going to be the last audible words you hear, aside from all the screaming and agony in the lake of fire for all eternity. See, and there it is for Belshazzar, even at that very end, hearing all this message, hearing the truth, instead of repenting, instead of trying to say, what do I need to do to fix this? Coming to peace with God. he tried to make a way to just please Daniel, gave him that cloak of purple, gave him the chain of gold, made him the third ruler in this nation. But again, in verse 30, that very night Belshazzar, king, was killed. You know why? The Persians, and this is how everything works together for God's timing, God's perfect timing. This happened on the night of. As I've told y'all before, in Babylon, there was a river flowing right in the middle of the city that fed the hanging gardens in Babylon. People from all over the country came to experience this. Come look at all the good that we have, all this great things, all these beautiful and wonderful things. Come see everything that we have and just bask in its glory. You want to stay here for a couple of days? Sure, we'll put you up in a palace. We'll give you anything and everything. Look at what we got. Look at what we can do for you. Rather than what Nebuchadnezzar saw as, look at what God has done for me. But that vanity, and that river flowing straight in there to this to the palace that fed this garden, that vanity is what killed the Babylonian Empire. Because the Persians on the outside of the wall had diverted the water into a local marsh, stopped the flow of water into the city, and they got into the river, came in, and killed everyone. Or not killed everyone, but conquered the city. And that night Belshazzar died. Possibly because a couple of the soldiers got into the palace and killed him. The vanity, pride of ourselves is what can kill us. So we need to make sure that we are humbling ourselves before a holy God and treating the things of God well and right, giving Him credit where credit is due. Recognize that our days are numbered. Recognize that the very breath in our lungs is from God, and He can snuff us out as quickly as we came into this world. Don't let the things of this world be what we idolize and want and desire so much. We can do that with our wives, our husbands, our children, grandchildren, our friends, our items, our objects, our things. Give credit where credit is due. Don't be like Belshazzar and be standing before judgment and being found wanting, because it's too late. That time has passed. The gift has gone to others. It has passed you over on that last day. Well, I hope that you were able to glean something from this. Like I said, make sure to join us Wednesday night. Brother Jeff will bring the service and our time of prayer, and then we'll be back Sunday, and again, we'll be going into chapter 7, skipping chapter 6, but for a reason, but you'll have to come to find out. So, God bless you all. I love you, and may God bless you as you go.